Welcome to Muslim Apologetics Australia. In this video, I'm going to play you a debate that took place between me and Nick McCallum from the 3AW693 program, debating Surah 434 regarding the beating of women. As you know, Hizbu Tahrih has again been in the spotlight because they produced a video where two women were discussing the verse in question, and they clearly pointed out that this verse does not mean to beat a woman in a physical way, rather it was symbolic, and of course it wasn't supposed to give them any harm and pain. Yet all the media went after Hizbu Tahrir and they started promoting that in their headlines that Muslim women were saying that the Quran actually says that you can beat women. It was all over the media, from news.com to 7 News to Daily Mail UK. All in their headlines, it was stated Muslim women are saying to get beaten by men, or the Quran says to beat women, or Hizbu Tahrir are saying to beat women, and it was all over the media, right? So, like the media loves to manipulate and sensationalize news, because that's what they do, these Islamophobes. They basically put this out into the news and they want to keep discrediting Islam, keep giving Islam a bad name, keep taking Muslims out of context to produce lies and misinformation. Well, I went and tackled Nick McCallum at the 3AW693 program, and you can see it now for yourself. So I'll play you the video and I'll also do a review, because what he did, like the cowards they are, they cut you off the video once they get refuted, and they pretend to keep talking as if they've won an argument over you to silence you. But just like he did a review, I'll do a review and then you can see for yourself. Let's play the debate.
Yeah, I just want to go back to talk about the controversy behind Hizbu Tahrir and those two women defending beating in the Quran.
Yep.
It just annoys me because have you actually watched the video?
Yes, I've watched bits of it, yep.
Bits of it. Have you seen the part where the women actually said that it's supposed to be conducted in a non-violent and a symbolic way, stressing that it should be painless?
Yes, I have. In fact, we've got a little bit of it here, so we'll play it, Mustafa.
And it's those women on whose part you fear disobedience. 3 measures are recommended. Advise them first, leave them alone in bed, and hit them.
Okay.
It's simple, like advise them means explaining the rule of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and encourage her to be obedient.
Okay.
And warn her against disobedience. And if it produces the desired result, then all well and all good. But if it doesn't, then the other measure in which he can use, as husband can, refuse to share the bed with her and not being intimate with her, or by not sleeping. And if this doesn't work and it does not bring the desired effect, then the third measure, which is permitted, I want to make this point very clear, that he is permitted, not obliged here or not encouraged, but he's permitted to hit her.
Okay, so that's part of it. You're right, Mustafa, they were talking about it being painless, but still the point being is no excuse of hitting women or hitting anyone.
Yeah, but Nick, you got to understand that they actually said that this hitting, if you went through the video, it's painless. So anything hitting which is painless is something such as tapping.
But,
you
why?
Could tap someone.
But Mustafa, that's still not. That is still an aggravating act.
It's not aggravating. Have you ever tapped anyone on the shoulder before?
Well, not in the context that they're talking about.
Okay,
when allegedly the woman has done under her husband's eyes something wrong.
Yes, okay, but he wanted to tap her because he wants to show that he's serious, and if she's distracted, he's tapping her so he can then talk to her about how serious he is.
That is something totally different. I mean,
that is totally different. Not totally, because the Islamophobes want to believe the context that it's a physical beating, and you got to hurt him. Ibn Kathir, one of the greatest scholars of Islam, his name is Ibn Abbas. He said that it should be conducted in a non-violent way. Now, these women who are actually on the discussion, if they knew that it was a physical beating and they were being hurt by this, why is women talking and defending the position? They're talking and defending the position because they don't believe in the Islamophobic interpretation that you have to physically beat people. Like you take pictures of women in Afghanistan and you show a man holding a big stick belting them. That is not the interpretation. And we're sick and tired of Islamophobes giving a false interpretation of the Quran.
Okay,
Now,
well,
you people call for a reformation on Islam. And we reform the Quran. We go to the Quran to teach that it's supposed to be a symbolic beating and not a literal beating. And you're still not happy. So whether we want to reform Islam or don't reform Islam, you're still not happy because you want to believe that the Quran beats women, period. And there's no other justification.
Mustafa, I don't. In fact, we are going to have Islamic leaders on, or an Islamic leader on in about half an hour, saying it is what their interpretation of the Quran is wrong. It's a wrong interpretation.
Do you know
but Mustafa, what I'm trying to tell you is, what they said, hitting anyone is wrong, and
but
also
you're not hitting anyone.
people.
You're not hitting anyone.
But Mustafa,
you're not hitting anyone. That's the problem. You have the problem. If I tap my wife, you call that hitting. That's not hitting. That's tapping her and telling her you've got hip and shoulder in AFL football. Yeah, you hip and shoulder people. You knock them to the ground. Do you say that's violence?
That is on a football field. That is on a football field, Mustafa.
You smack toddlers on their bum to discipline them.
But hang on, Mustafa, we're not talking about toddlers here. We are talking about two grown people and a man, allegedly, according to these women, disciplining a woman because she is not being obedient.
But it's not about discipline. It's not about discipline. No, you want to know it's about discipline. It's not. I gave you the description of the toddler being smacked, showing that there are worse cases, and I'm not even comparing it to a toddler. I'm not comparing it to police officers who hold batons in their hands to beat men and women in public for crowd control.
It is a very different scenario.
You want to talk over me and say it's a different scenario. I understand it's a different scenario. I'm not comparing the two together. I'm just showing you that there are far more violence in society, and this isn't violence. I'm showing you that the Islamic concept of tapping a woman is not the same for beating a child on the bum or crowd control where police officers use batons against civilians.
The whole point is, this, according to Islamic leaders, is a misinterpretation of the Quran. The Quran does not indicate that you hit anyone with any form of force or otherwise. They say that is wrong. I am not an Islamophobe. In fact, I'm always being criticised because I try and stand up for the good, moderate Islamic people. I just think what they have done is wrong. There is no excuse for hitting anyone, particularly not for hitting women in this domestic violence situation. The message that video sent was just wrong. It was immoral and it's illegal. And unfortunately, there are so many thousands of really good, moderate Muslims, and no doubt they've woken up this morning, read all of this and said, oh no, not again. There is a very small section of their community which has done the wrong thing by them again. Mustafa, I do appreciate your call. It is now 28.
As you can see, he actually cut me off the radio and pretended to talk over me just to basically silence me, but he really didn't silence me. As you can clearly see, that I gave him the real true context of the verse, that it doesn't actually mean a physical painful beating to actually discipline her. It was just basically a tap. And I actually used the example of AFL players hitting one another, and even in Western society where parents can actually spank female children, right? And he basically said, that's a wrong comparison. What the silly fool did not understand, I wasn't actually making a comparison. I was actually showing him that in Western society, violence is actually accepted. And when you look into the Quran, the actual beating is not even as bad as smacking a child on the bum, nor is it even as bad as hip and shouldering someone in an AFL game. It doesn't even compare. Because why? Because in the Quran, it's only a tap where you just, like a slight little tap, all you're doing is tapping her like you would walk up to someone on the corner of a street and you'll tap him on the back and say, "Excuse me, sir, can you give me some directions?" Okay, it's basically just to get her attention, just to show you how serious you are in the matter, because you want to solve it. It's not about trying to discipline her like you're trying to discipline an animal. So this is their misinterpretation of the text, and he understood my point, but he was trying to manipulate it and change it into something else. And in the end, when he got completely debunked and refuted, he basically had no comeback except to give a false equivocation and, of course, take me off the radio. However, it was interesting when he was saying there are different interpretations to the Quran, and he basically kind of agreed that that isn't really the interpretation. But I can tell you right now that they do, in fact, believe in a physical beating. This is what they want to believe, and that's what sells papers and gives sensation to the story, because otherwise, how can they make money otherwise? Because Islam and Islamophobia makes them lots of dollars and it sells them lots of papers. Although the Hizbu Tahrih women in the video gave the term discipline is not actually in the Quran, but that could be a misinterpretation, I agree. But like I said, the smacking is only symbolic, non-literal. It's not to convey any pain or any mark on the body. It's just like you would walk up to someone on the street to tap them and ask them for directions. That's all it is. But you see, most Islamophobes do not want to accept that interpretation because, like I said, they want to convey to everyone that women are oppressed, like in Afghanistan and all over the globe, when it is Australian men who are generally oppressing women. And that's why we have something called White Ribbon Day, where thousands of women have faced domestic abuse, and of course they are protesting. So if the Muslim women were under such campaign of being abused, trust me, they'd be protesting as well, which basically shows that no one follows that false interpretation that you should physically harm and beat women. So this is completely wrong, and they know it. But of course, they will portray something other than the true interpretation in the media just to slander and lie about Islam. And of course, when we refute them and they get caught out, they of course shut us off the radio. I think this is also another important point to mention. They put people like Sheikh Tawhidi, who actually comes on the Andrew Bolt show. He himself even gave a similar interpretation to us, and he said that if you beat a woman and it leaves a mark, you have to pay her money in gold. So why wasn't Sheikh Tawhidi, this fake imam from South Australia, who Ayan Ali Hirsi actually said we should follow this man, why isn't this man put all over Australian media being criticised, saying that, oh, you can smack her, but if you smack her and if it doesn't leave a mark, then it's okay, but if it leaves a mark, you got to pay her in gold. How come he's not all over the media? Why? Because he slanders Islam more than anyone else. He lies about Islam, and that's the best thing that they've got, to lie more about Islam. But see, they won't go after him. They would go after Hizbu Tahrih and his organization, because at the end of the day, they're a political movement, and of course they have a clear bias and agenda against them. Okay, the interesting thing is now he's going to actually, Mr. Nick McCallum is going to get an imam to come on the radio show to now speak on behalf of this same subject. Let's go ahead and listen.
This now, and as I mentioned earlier, it's a small group of Islamic women from the radical Hizbu Tahrih group. They've released a video on Facebook saying it's acceptable for Muslim men to hit their wives, but only gently. Now, of course,
Did you notice the liar, how he actually repeats himself? He says it's okay to hit women, but only gently. See how he's actually still lying like a manipulated liar. The group didn't say only gently. They said basically only gently in the context of there should be absolutely no pain. Absolutely no pain, right? And it's just basically a tap. So the guy just can't stop lying even after he's been refuted. Let's continue.
Hit their wives, but only gently. Now, of course, it is never acceptable to hit a woman. It's never acceptable to hit anyone.
We actually agree with you. It's never acceptable to hit a woman. But this silly person thinks that tapping is same as hitting them, like with a closed fist, or slapping them. It's got none of that. This guy really needs to go look up the dictionary definition to what tapping a person means. To walk up to him in the street and just tap him, hey sir, where's the directions? So he still cannot, does he just pretend not to see that there's a clear difference? How clear cut, deceitful and deceptive can these people get?
To hit anyone, and I found that video quite disconcerting, and obviously it's created a lot of debate within the community, but a lot of...
No, you want that debate created because you love misinformation. You love sending lies out into the public.
Muslim leaders have come out as well and opposed it. 96 900 693 13 13 32. Your reaction to it shortly, and it must...
Okay, so now we'll go to the Imam who will come and speak on behalf of this topic.
Not again. We've been let down by a small section of our community. Adele Salman is the Vice President of the Islamic Council of Victoria. Adele, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Nick.
So when you read about this, or when you heard about it this morning, what was your reaction?
Pretty much the reaction that you just articulated. Here we go again. We really don't need this.
Okay, so when you saw it, the actual video... what did you think to yourself?
Well, just for clarification, I haven't actually seen the video, but I read the text, quite extensive text on the video, and obviously I'm really concerned. It's the wrong message to be sending out. There is never any excuse for domestic violence. Muslim leaders have been absolutely unequivocal on this point. Islamic Council of Victoria is unequivocal on this point. There's never any justification, and it concerns me that impression is being given, and that's not the correct impression. And domestic violence can take many forms. It can take physical violence, emotional violence, other forms of abuse, psychological abuse, and all of those are unacceptable. And it's just concerning that people could possibly make any justification for that type of behaviour.
So
do you notice the deception here? Is this Imam actually paid from the board of Imams? He's saying that he didn't watch the video, but he read extensively the article. He's coming on radio and he hasn't even watched it, but just read something extensively, and he's making a judgment on it. And the women in the video, nowhere do they say it's a violent beating. So I can't believe it. You have this Imam that's probably paid by the government, because they usually get paid by the government to just say exactly what the secular think tanks want you to say. They're basically political corrected Imams. So the women, he doesn't even speak to Peter McCallum and say to him, Nick McCallum, that the women weren't actually saying that, and it's a media manipulation. This is what they do, right? They handpick these imams to speak on their behalf and actually slander the Muslims themselves, which is completely disheartening. Let's continue.
I leave that to the people of knowledge and those who are scholars who have interpreted the Quran. What I can say, though, is there are different interpretations of that verse, a particular verse in question. And so you'll have different views. One thing that Muslims do not disagree on is the example of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And he never, ever struck a woman, ever, in any way, in any form. In fact, he was the most gentle and kind to all of the women in his life. And in a famous saying, he did say very clearly, the best amongst you, i.e. my followers, are those who are best to your families and to your wives, and I am the best amongst you to my family and my wife. He is our role model, and we should follow his example. Let's not get into the controversy and debate. Let's follow an unequivocal example of moral behaviour.
Now, as I understand it, some local imams are going to do a video message. Is that right?
Yes, there will be a video produced by some prominent local imams. Again, just reiterating and re-emphasising messages that they've sent in the past, but I think it's I guess, unfortunately, and this is not just about the Muslim community, this is about our entire Australian society, we need to keep reinforcing the message that domestic violence is unacceptable, and so that's what they'll be doing. I'll also point your listeners to a video called Breaking the Cycle of Domestic Violence, which was produced a while ago by a group of very prominent imams and religious leaders, including the Mufti of Australia, Dr. Ibrahim Muhammad, who actually, and it was a terrific video, and it denounces domestic violence, it gives great advice, it encourages victims to seek assistance and help. And it's just a shame that very few people are actually aware of this video, because the messages in it are absolutely terrific.
And so, Abel, just finally, then that particular group, the Hizbu Tahrih, they're an extremist group, is that right? How are they viewed within the mainstream Muslim community of Australia?
Well, I think they're viewed differently by different people. Hizbu Tahrih are a political group more than anything else. They have a particular political platform that they advocate. They have some positions that many Muslims might agree with, and other positions that we would disagree with. And on this particular issue, as in some other issues, Islamic Council of Victoria, I personally would disagree with them.
Okay, then. Well, thank you very much for joining.
Okay, did you notice? So they actually got an imam to come and disagree with another Hizbu Tahrir, another organization. And this is a secular think tanks. This is what they do. They get Muslim organizations to condemn other Muslim organizations, only in the effort of trying to then portray that the Quran actually condones violence. And of course you have Hizbu Tahrir also illustrating that, when in fact this imam, if he had any balls, he should have got up and said, you guys are manipulating the text, lying, and you are manipulating what Hizbu Tahrir said and the women on that panel actually said, and they did not ever condone violence of any sort. In fact, they were speaking symbolically and the opposite, and to show that it was only conducted in a non-violent fashion through a tapping. But you won't get imams like that, unfortunately, to stand up, because like I said, they are more politically correct. I do have to agree with the imam when he brought up verses from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and he showed that clearly that the Prophet ﷺ never hit wives and did any of that sort of stuff, which is good. I agree with him on that. But I wish they had more guts to stand up and condemn the media lies of spreading lies about this group, Hizbu Tahrir, when it comes to the beating of women. And they did not say that. You can go read their report. I'll put a hyperlink below this video, and you can see for yourself, they did not ever say or preach domestic violence abuse against women. In fact, it was quite contrary, and they explained it clearly in their refutation. Did you notice the Imam said there are different interpretations of the Quran? Well, why didn't he actually give the correct interpretation? Why didn't he spend, instead of criticizing Hizbu Tahrir, why didn't he spend a bit of time also giving us the right interpretation? And he said, well, he's not a scholar. Well, if he's from the board of Imams, why isn't he giving us an interpretation? I mean, what, you can't even interpret the Quran? So why are you part of the board of Imams? Why don't you just sit down and, I don't know, go back to preschool or something? So what was his whole duty? To say that the Prophet Muhammad never hit his wives and to condemn that Hizbu Tahrir group. So this is what they want to do. They want to disunite the community by bringing up these imams only to condemn other groups, but not in fact condemn the Western political correctness and their lies and mistrust in misinterpreting the Quran and misinterpreting certain groups just to put paranoia and hate amongst the Muslim community. An Islamophobe actually wrote to me and said, Mustafa Muhammad In the video, the woman leading the conversation, who is identified as senior teacher Rem Alouchi, says a man is permitted to hit a woman as an act of discipline, and says the fact that you need a special stick to show your seriousness is even more of a joke. And my response is, although I may disagree with the term discipline because it's not actually in the actual verse of the Quran, there is something called, mentally getting their attention. The small toothbrush is not part of physical discipline unless you're pretty ticklish, because like I said, it's just a tap. And I'll post a video also below this video where an Islamic Sheik in Australia actually shows how the conduction is taken with the toothbrush, where it's a little slight tap on the shoulder, and I'll actually post the video below this video where it causes no psychological harm and no physical harm. In fact, it's actually ticklish. And just in case the Islamophobes bring this up, I'm going to quickly refute it. Josh Spencer, he actually quotes two hadiths, and I'll quickly address those and then complete the video. He posts a refutation about Muhammad actually did instruct women. He struck his wife, and he quotes the hadith, Sahih Muslim 4:21-27. He says, Muhammad struck his favorite wife Aisha in the chest one evening when she left the house without his permission. Aisha narrates, he struck me on the chest, which caused me pain. Also in Sahih al-Bukhari, a woman came to Muhammad and begged her to stop her husband from beating her. Her skin was bruised so badly that it was described as being greener than the green veil she was wearing. Muhammad did not admonish her husband, but instead ordered her to return to him and submit to his desires. Okay, so the refutation is as follows. As you know, there's no contradiction here, as the Prophet Aisha radiallahu anha in Sahih al-Bukhari actually said that the Prophet never hit anyone with his hand, a woman or a servant, except in the battlefield where he fought against enemy combatants. This is in actually Sahih al-Bukhari. Also, the Prophet pushed Aisha on her chest because she was spying on him. He didn't strike her with a fist blow. He instead pushed her away like crowd controllers do today because she was jealous and she was obviously spying on him at night, so he pushed her by the chest. And of course, women are sensitive, and of course it may have caused her pain, but it wasn't intentionally to physically harm her, because even Aisha radiallahu anha herself said that the Prophet never hit any woman or servant with his hand, and he only did so in the battlefield against enemy combatants. So that clears that hadith and misinterpretation to the hadith. The Arabic word is actually dafa. He pushed her on the chest, and of course he did not strike her with a fist blow or any other sharp object punch. So this is clearly a misinterpretation. As for the woman who was actually turned away when she came and complained to the Prophet, the reason why he turned her away because he gave the woman a chance to mend up with her husband. He didn't want to issue a verdict of divorce right away. Just like the Prophet also turned away women who came to him about committing adultery. Remember that story where the woman came twice to him, and on the third time she was stoned, because when she came twice she wanted to be stoned or the punishment carried out, and the Prophet didn't want to do that, right? The had punishment, the woman committed adultery. The Prophet turned her away so she can repent, because she also had the option of repenting. But of course, the woman wanted her punishment. So basically, the Prophet ﷺ turned that woman away twice, only so she can repent and mend her ways. Of course, that is the reason why he actually told this woman to actually go back to your husband to mend your way. It wasn't that he was neglecting any abuse here, or he was just trying to cover up the abuse. No, he actually did not want to issue divorce, because divorce is a major destruction for the family. So he basically wanted to mend her ways. I'm sure if she came to him 2 or 3 times complaining of the same thing, then of course he would have issued a divorce. So there you have it, folks. That's the end. We've cleared misinterpretations. We've debunked Nick McCallum and refuted him. He couldn't handle the debate and the discussion. He put us off the radio. And of course, he went and invited another imam to try and justify their gang up on Hizbu Tahrih, which didn't work at all. But that's okay. They can keep playing these games. And even Mick McCallum understands that the interpretation is not part of what the Islamophobes understand. And of course, the Islamophobes will bring up the same interpretation and lie on the Quran. Doesn't matter how much you talk about reformation, they want to believe that the Quran is outdated and it can't be used in today's age, and that's their own attempt. That's what they mean by reformation, to try and remove the whole book together. So even if you give a correct interpretation, it's still not accepted, because like I said, they are liars and they want to follow the Islamophobic narrative that you can beat your wife, which is far from the truth. Thank you for listening. Goodbye, good day.